Captain Jake Morrison stood at the main window of his ship and watched Earth die. The blue planet that had been home to billions of people now looked like a burning coal in space. Orange flames covered the continents where great cities once stood. The oceans had turned black from the smoke and ash. Everything he had ever known was gone. The alien ships hung in space around Earth like metal vultures. They were huge and dark with red lights that pulsed like angry heartbeats. The Zephyrians had come from the deep parts of space 3 days ago. They brought weapons that could cut through steel like paper and shields that stopped every human. Weapon. Earth's mighty fleets had lasted only hours against them. Morrison's ship was called the Guardian. It was old and beaten up now. Holes in the metal walls were sealed with emergency foam that looked like gray scabs. The lights flickered on and off. The air smelled like burned plastic and fear. His crew of 300 brave men and women had been cut down to just 47 survivors. Most of them were hurt. All of them were scared. He thought about his wife Lisa and his little girl Amy. They had been in Denver when the alien fire came down from the sky. The whole city had vanished in a flash of white light. One moment it was there with its tall buildings and busy streets. The next moment there was only a smoking hole in the ground. Morrison had screamed into his radio trying to reach them, but there was only silence. The other human ships were all gone now. Some had been blown apart by alien weapons. Others had given up and surrendered when they saw how hopeless the fight was. The Guardian was the last free human ship in the solar system. Morrison knew they would not last much longer against the alien fleet. A message came through the ship's speakers. The voice was cold and spoke in broken human words. It was the alien commander giving them one final chance to surrender. The voice said that humans could live as slaves if they gave up now. If they kept fighting, all humans would die in pain. The voice gave them 1 hour to decide. Morrison looked around at his bridge crew. Lieutenant Commander Susan Blake stood next to him. Her uniform was torn and dirty. She had a bandage over her left eye from the last battle. Chief Engineer Rick Martinez sat at his station trying to keep the ship's power running. His hands shook as he worked. Communications Officer Bobby Turner listened to alien radio signals with headphones. His face was pale and tired. Medical Officer Linda Hayes moved between the wounded crew members. She whispered soft words to help them feel less afraid. These people had followed Morrison into hell itself. They had watched their world burn and their friends die. They had fought impossible battles against enemies that seemed like gods. But they were still here. They were still human. They were still free. Morrison made his choice. He would not surrender. To the aliens, he would not let his people become slaves. The Guardian could not win against the alien fleet. Their weapons were too weak and their ship was too damaged. But Morrison had one last card to play. The ship carried an experimental quantum drive that could bend space and time. The engineers said it was too dangerous to use. It could tear the ship apart or worse. But Morrison had a different idea for how to use it. He called his crew together. In the cargo bay, the room was dim and cold. Broken equipment was stacked against the walls. The 47 survivors gathered around him. They looked like ghosts in their torn uniforms. Some leaned on each other for support. Others sat on boxes because they were too weak to stand. Morrison looked into their faces. He saw fear there, but also something else. He saw determination. He saw the stubborn human refusal to give up even when everything was lost. These people had already given everything they had to defend their home. Their families were gone. Their world was destroyed. But they were still ready to fight. He began to speak. His voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the room. He told them about his plan. It would mean the end of the Guardian and everyone on it, but it would also send a message to every thinking being in the galaxy. It would show them what humans were made of when they had nothing left to lose. The alien ships moved closer, their weapons charged with deadly light. Time was running out. But Morrison and his crew were ready to show the galaxy what it truly meant to be human. The alien deadline was 30 minutes away when Lieutenant Commander Susan Blake brought Morrison the final damage report. The numbers were bad, but Morrison already knew that. 3 main engines were dead. The weapon systems were running on backup power. The hull had 17 major breaches. Half the crew quarters were open to space. The Guardian was dying just like everything else human. Another message came from the alien commander. This time the voice was angry. It said that humans who did not surrender would be taken alive and hurt for a very long time. It said human children would watch their parents suffer. It said human cities would burn for days instead of hours. The voice wanted to make humans afraid so they would give up. Morrison turned off the message and looked at his crew. They had heard the threats, but their faces showed no fear. Chief Engineer Rick Martinez was already pulling apart the quantum drive's control panel. His tools sparked as he worked to rewire the dangerous machine. Medical Officer Linda Hayes moved between the wounded, helping them feel less pain. She sang old Earth songs in a soft voice. Communications Officer Bobby Turner had found alien radio signals and was learning how their technology worked. Morrison felt proud of these people. They had lost everything, but they still cared about each other. They still worked to help others even when death was coming for them all. This was what made humans different from the aliens. The Zephyrians took what they wanted by force. Humans gave what they had by choice. The plan was simple but dangerous. The quantum drive could open holes in space and time. Normally it was used to make ships travel faster than light. But Morrison wanted to use it in a different way. He would overload the drive and create a signal that could reach every part of the galaxy at once. The signal would carry a message that would change everything. Martinez crawled inside the drive chamber with his tools. The space was small and hot. Radiation from the quantum core made his skin burn. But he kept working because he knew how important this was. He connected new wires and changed the power flow. He made the drive do things it was never meant to do. The machine began to hum with dangerous energy. Hayes gathered all the medical knowledge stored in the ship's computers. She found cures for diseases that killed millions of people. She found surgical methods that could save lives across the galaxy. She found research about human biology that could help other species understand themselves better. All of this knowledge she prepared to send with Morrison's message. Turner broke into the alien communication networks. He learned their language and their codes. He found out how their technology worked and where their weaknesses were. But more than that, he found something surprising. Some of the alien soldiers were talking about humans in ways their commanders would not like. They were saying that humans fought with honor. They were saying that human bravery was something to respect. Morrison began recording the most important message in human history. He did not record words of anger or hate. He did not ask for help or beg for mercy. Instead, he recorded everything good about humanity. He told stories about people who helped strangers. He shared music that made people happy. He explained scientific discoveries that could make life better for everyone. The message grew larger as the crew added their own pieces. Martinez included engineering plans that could help build better machines. Hayes added medical knowledge that could heal the sick. Turner included human art and poetry that showed the beauty of human feelings. Each person on the Guardian contributed something precious from human culture. But the most important part of the message was not the knowledge or the art, it was the story of what was happening right now on the Guardian. Morrison recorded how his crew worked together even though they were about to die. He showed how humans could choose love over hate and hope over fear even in their darkest hour. The alien ships moved closer. Their weapons glowed with deadly energy. The Guardian shook as enemy fire hit the shields. Morrison knew they had only minutes left before the aliens would board their ship or destroy it completely. Martinez called out from inside the quantum drive. The modifications were almost complete. The drive would overload in exactly 10 minutes. When it did, the resulting explosion would tear the ship apart. But in that moment of destruction, it would also send their message across the entire galaxy. Morrison looked at his crew one last time. They were scared, but they were also determined. They knew they were about to die, but they also knew their deaths would mean something. They would show the galaxy that humans would rather die free than live as slaves. They would prove that even when humans had nothing left, they could still give everything. The alien commander sent one final message. The voice was cold and angry. It said humans had chosen death over wisdom. It said the galaxy would forget that humans ever existed. But Morrison smiled as he heard these words. The alien was wrong. The galaxy would remember humans forever after this day. They would remember what humans chose to do when they had nothing left to lose. The quantum drive reached critical levels. Energy crackled through the ship's corridors. The lights went out as all power flowed into Morrison's final plan. The quantum drive hummed with dangerous power as Morrison finished recording humanity's final gift to the galaxy. The message contained everything humans had ever learned or created. Every song that had made people dance. Every cure that had saved lives. Every story that had brought joy or comfort. Every scientific discovery that had pushed back the darkness of ignorance. Chief Engineer Rick Martinez crawled out of the drive chamber with burns on his arms and face. The radiation was getting stronger as the quantum core prepared to overload. He had done something that the textbook said was impossible. He had turned a space travel device into the most powerful transmitter ever built. When the drive exploded, it would send Morrison's message to every star system in the galaxy. Medical officer Linda Hayes worked at her computer station, adding the last pieces of human medical knowledge to the transmission. Her fingers flew over the keyboard as she uploaded surgical procedures that could save alien lives. She included research about pain management and healing techniques. She even added human methods for dealing with grief and loss. Her own grief over losing Earth made her want to help others avoid the same pain. Communications. Officer Bobby Turner monitored the alien radio channels. He was surprised by what he heard. The young alien soldiers were talking about humans in ways that would anger their commanders. They spoke with respect about human courage in battle. They wondered why humans would fight so hard for a lost cause. Some even questioned whether destroying humanity was the right thing to do. Turner quickly added these alien communications to the message. He wanted the galaxy to know that even the enemy recognized something special about humans. He included translations of the alien language and their communication protocols. This knowledge could help other species talk to the Zephyrians or defend against them. Morrison walked through the dying ship one last time. In the medical bay, he found Hayes caring for the wounded crew members. She held the hand of a young pilot who was scared of dying. She told him stories about Earth's green forests and blue oceans. The pilot smiled and said he could almost see the trees she described. Even facing death, Hayes was using her gift for healing to bring comfort. In the engine room, Martinez was making final adjustments to the quantum drive. His hands were steady even though he knew he was working with enough energy to vaporize the entire ship. He whistled an old tune his grandfather had taught him. When Morrison asked about it, Martinez said music helped him think clearly. Even in humanity's final hour, there was still beauty and joy. Turner sat at his station with headphones on, listening to signals from across the galaxy. He had detected something amazing. Other alien species were receiving the early parts of Morrison's message. The signal was so powerful it was reaching distant star systems immediately. Turner heard excited voices speaking in languages he did not recognize. They were talking about the humans and their incredible gift of knowledge. The crew gathered on the bridge as the quantum drive reached maximum power. The deck plates vibrated under their feet. Sparks flew from damaged control panels. The air tasted like electricity and ozone. Through the main window they could see the alien fleet moving into attack formation. Red weapon beams charged up, ready to destroy the Guardian. Morrison stood before his crew and spoke his final words as their captain. He told them he was proud to serve with the best people humanity had ever produced. He said their names would be remembered forever across the galaxy. He said they had chosen to give everything they had rather than surrender what they believed in. Hayes stepped forward and took Morrison's hand. She said she was not afraid because they were facing the end together. Martinez joined them and said he was honored to help send humanity's gift to the stars. Turner added that he had always wanted to explore the galaxy, and now, in a way, He would visit every world at once. The 47 survivors of humanity's final battle stood together as equals. They were no longer officers and crew members. They were human beings making the greatest sacrifice possible. They were choosing to die so that the best parts of humanity could live forever. Something unexpected happened as the quantum drive prepared to explode. Messages began coming back to the Guardian from distant star systems. Alien voices speaking words of wonder and gratitude. The Altarians sent songs inspired by human music. The Korvaxi transmitted military honors for human courage. Even stranger species that humans had never heard of were responding to Morrison's gift. Turner worked frantically to translate the incoming messages. What he found amazed him. The galaxy was not empty of kindness and hope, as the Zephyrians claimed. There were other species who valued peace and knowledge and beauty. They had been waiting for someone to show them that these things were worth fighting for. Morrison realized that his message was doing more than preserving human culture. It was awakening something that had been sleeping in the hearts of species across the galaxy. The gift of human knowledge was inspiring others to remember their own capacity for good. The Zephyrian commander sent an angry transmission ordering the Guardian to stop whatever they were doing, but it was too late. The quantum drive had reached the point of no return. In 60 seconds it would overload and send humanity's final message. Racing across space faster than light itself, Morrison looked at his crew one last time. They were smiling despite everything. They had found a way to turn their defeat into victory and their ending into a beginning. Junior Officer Veltara sat at her monitoring station aboard the Zephyrian dreadnought, watching the human signals with growing confusion. For 3 days she had listened to human communications, expecting to hear the usual sounds of a defeated species, crying and begging, and offers to trade anything for mercy. Instead, she heard something that made no sense to her Zephyrian mind. The humans were giving things away. Not selling or trading or negotiating, just giving freely to anyone who would listen. Medical knowledge that could save millions of lives. Scientific discoveries that could advance civilization by centuries. Art and music and stories that stirred feelings. Veltara did not know she could have. She had been ordered to monitor human communications and report any military intelligence. But there was no military intelligence in these transmissions. There were only gifts. Veltara found herself listening to human music during her off-duty hours. She read human poetry that spoke about love and loss in ways that touched her alien heart. She studied human medicine and realized it could help her own people who suffered from diseases the Zephyrian doctors could not cure. Warlord Vexkar commanded the invasion fleet from his massive command ship. He was a veteran of 47 conquered worlds. He knew how conquest worked. First you showed overwhelming force. Then you gave the enemy a choice between slavery and death. Most species chose slavery. The few that chose death were quickly destroyed and forgotten, but these humans were breaking all the rules. They had chosen death, but they were not acting like a defeated species. Instead of begging for mercy, they were offering help. Instead of threatening revenge, they were sharing their greatest treasures. Vexkar had never seen anything like it. In his long military career, Veltara brought him her daily report about human communications. She tried to keep her voice steady as she explained what the humans were doing. They were preparing to broadcast everything they knew to the entire galaxy, not as a weapon or a threat, but as a gift to all thinking beings. They were going to die, but they wanted their knowledge to help others live better lives. Vexkar listened to Veltara's report with growing unease. This was not how conquered species were supposed to behave. The humans should be trying to save themselves, not save others. They should be thinking about their own survival, not the welfare of aliens they had never met. Something about this situation felt wrong in ways the warlord could not understand. Other reports came in from across the galaxy. The human transmission was reaching every inhabited star system at the same time. Species that had never worked together before were suddenly talking about the humans and their incredible gift. The peaceful Altarians were weeping at human poetry. The warrior Korvaxi were studying human military history and finding concepts of honor they had forgotten. Even the ancient ethereals had emerged from their cosmic isolation to examine this strange phenomenon. Valtara found herself spending more time studying human culture. She learned about human families and how they cared for their children. She read about human friendships and how they helped each other through difficult times. She discovered human concepts of mercy and forgiveness that were foreign to Zephyrian. Thinking most disturbing of all, she began to question her own orders. The Zephyrian Empire conquered other species because they were told it was natural and right. The strong took from the weak because that was how the universe worked. But the humans were showing that the strong could choose to give to the weak. Instead, they were proving that there was another way to live. Other junior officers were having similar thoughts. They gathered in small groups during off-duty hours to discuss the human transmissions. They shared the music and art and stories they had discovered. They began to see their own empire in a new light. For the first time in Zephyrian history, soldiers were questioning whether conquest was truly the right path. Vexkar received an urgent message from the Zephyrian Emperor. The transmission from across the galaxy was causing unrest on many Zephyrian worlds. Citizens were asking why their empire destroyed beautiful things instead of creating them. Some were even suggesting that the humans should be spared because of their generous gift to the galaxy. The Emperor's orders were clear. All humans must die immediately. Their ship must be destroyed before it could complete its transmission. The galaxy must be shown that defying the Zephyrian Empire led only to death and destruction. There could be no mercy for those who challenged Zephyrian authority, but as Vexkar prepared to give the attack order, something unprecedented happened. Messages began arriving from other species across the galaxy. Not communications directed at the Zephyrians, but signals broadcast to everyone. The Altarians announced they were sending medical supplies to any world that needed them, inspired by human generosity. The Korvaxi declared they would protect any species that chose peace over war in honor of human sacrifice. Most shocking of all, the ancient ethereals spoke for the first time in 1,000 years. Their message was simple, but it shook the foundations of galactic politics. They said the humans had shown what true strength looked like. True strength was not the power to destroy, but the wisdom to create and share and protect. Valtara watched her commander's face as the reports came in. She could see his confidence wavering. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled through fear and force for centuries. But the humans were inspiring something the Zephyrians could not fight with weapons. They were inspiring hope. The human ship called Guardian was preparing for its final moment. Its quantum drive was about to overload and send humanity's gift racing across space. But that gift had already begun to change the galaxy in ways no one could have predicted. Valtara made a decision that would have been unthinkable just days before. She stood up at her station and spoke words that no Zephyrian officer had ever spoken to their commander. She asked Vexkar to spare the humans. She said they had shown the galaxy something beautiful and that beauty should not be destroyed. The bridge of the Guardian shook as the quantum drive reached its final moments. Captain Jake Morrison felt the deck plates vibrate under his feet as energy levels climbed beyond anything the ship was designed to handle. In 30 seconds, the drive would overload and tear the ship apart. But in those 30 seconds, it would also broadcast humanity's gift to every corner of the galaxy. Communications Officer Bobby Turner suddenly straightened at his station. His eyes went wide as new signals flooded in from across space. He looked at Morrison with amazement and said that ships were coming. Not Zephyrian ships, but vessels from species he had never seen before. The Altarians had launched their medical fleet. The Korvaxi battle groups were moving at maximum speed. Even the mysterious ethereals were manifesting their energy forms in normal space. Morrison could not believe what he was hearing. The human message had not just been received by other species, it had inspired them to act. Civilizations that had remained neutral for centuries were suddenly taking sides. They were coming to defend a species they had never met, because humans had shown them something worth defending. Medical officer Linda Hayes looked up from her station where she had been monitoring the ship's life support systems. She told Morrison that the incoming ships were not just coming to fight. They were broadcasting medical assistance and offering to evacuate human survivors. Species across the galaxy had been so moved by human generosity that they were risking their own lives to help. Chief Engineer Rick Martinez called out from the quantum drive chamber. The overload was 10 seconds away and could not be stopped. But he had detected something incredible in the energy patterns. The drive was not just sending their message to other star systems. It was creating a permanent network that would allow instant communication across the entire galaxy. Humanity's final gift would connect every thinking being in the universe. Warlord Vexcar watched his tactical displays with growing alarm. His fleet was now outnumbered 3-1 as alien ships continued to arrive. The Altarian medical vessels were broadcasting healing frequencies that were healing his own wounded crew members. The Korvaxi warships were taking defensive positions around the human vessel. Most disturbing of all, his own junior officers were hesitating to follow attack orders. Junior officer Veltara had started something that was spreading through the Zephyrian fleet like a virus. Other young officers were questioning why they were destroying a species that had offered them gifts. They were asking why the Empire chose conquest over cooperation. Some were even refusing direct orders. For the first time in Zephyrian military history, the ethereal beings manifested as pillars of pure light around the Guardian. Their voices spoke directly into the minds of every being present. They said the humans had awakened something that had been sleeping in the galaxy for too long. They called it the memory of what civilized beings could become when they chose wisdom over war. Morrison realized that his plan to create a monument to human defiance had become something far greater. It had become the spark that would ignite a galactic revolution. Not a revolution of weapons and armies, but a revolution of ideas and values. The humans had shown the galaxy that there was another way to live. Turner announced that the Zephyrian Emperor was broadcasting emergency orders to his fleet. The Emperor commanded all ships to destroy the humans immediately and then attack any alien vessels that interfered. But many Zephyrian captains were not responding to the orders. The human example of courage and sacrifice had inspired even their enemies to reconsider their choices. The quantum drive reached critical overload. Energy arced through the Guardian's corridors as the ship began to tear itself apart. But Morrison and his crew felt no fear. They could see through the main window that they were no longer alone. Hundreds of alien ships surrounded them. Beings they had never met were willing to die to protect them because of what they had chosen to give. Hayes reported that the alien medical ships were attempting to beam the human survivors to safety. But the Guardian's failing systems were interfering with the rescue attempt. Morrison made a final decision as captain. He ordered his crew to abandon ship while they still could. But his crew refused to leave him behind. Martinez emerged from the drive chamber for the last time. His uniform was burned and his face was pale from radiation exposure. He said the quantum network was now permanent and could never be destroyed. Every species in the galaxy would be connected forever. They would be able to share knowledge and help each other in ways that had never been possible before. The Zephyrian fleet began to break apart as individual captains made their own choices. Some followed the Emperor's orders and prepared to attack. Others declared they would no longer serve an empire that destroyed beauty and wisdom. The human sacrifice had created the first civil war in Zephyrian history. Veltara found herself in command of her section when her superior officers were arrested for refusing orders. She made a choice that would echo through history. She ordered her ship to protect the humans instead of destroying them. Dozens of other young Zephyrian officers followed her example. The Guardian's hull began to crack as the quantum overload reached its peak. But the ship had completed its mission. Humanity's message was now racing across the galaxy faster than light itself. Every species would receive the gift of human knowledge and the story of human courage. They would know what 47 humans had chosen to do when they had nothing left to lose. Morrison looked at his crew one final time. They were holding hands as the ship died around them. They were not afraid because they could see the galaxy. changing before their eyes. They had lit a fire that would burn away the darkness of ignorance and cruelty. They had given everything they had, and in return they had given the galaxy hope for a better future. The quantum drive exploded in a flash of light that could be seen from 100 star systems. The quantum explosion lit up the solar system like a new star being born. But instead of destroying everything around it, the blast created something beautiful. Streams of energy spread out in perfect patterns, carrying humanity's message to every inhabited world in the galaxy. The network that Chief Engineer Rick Martinez had built in the Guardian's final moments connected every thinking being in the universe. Captain Jake Morrison opened his eyes and found himself lying on a soft surface, breathing clean air. He was not dead. Around him, he could see his crew members waking up in what looked like a medical facility. Medical Officer Linda Hayes sat up on the bed next to him and smiled. Communications Officer Bobby Turner was already awake and talking excitedly to beings Morrison had never seen before. An Altarian doctor approached Morrison's bed. The alien was tall and thin with silver skin that seemed to glow with inner light. In perfect human English, the doctor explained that they had managed to transport the Guardian's crew to safety just moments before the ship exploded. The quantum blast had not killed them, but had instead scattered them across several rescue ships. Morrison learned that the explosion had created the largest communication network in galactic history. Every species could now talk to every other species instantly across any distance. The knowledge that humans had shared was already being used to heal the sick and solve problems that had plagued civilizations for centuries. But more important than the knowledge was the example humans had set. Turner brought Morrison reports from across the galaxy. The human sacrifice had inspired a revolution of kindness that was spreading faster than the quantum network itself. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years were suddenly working together. The Altarians were sharing their medical technology freely. The Korvaxi were using their military strength to protect weaker species instead of conquering them. Even more amazing was what had happened to the Zephyrian Empire. The civil war that had started with Junior Officer Veltara questioning her orders had spread to every Zephyrian world. Young Zephyrians who had learned about human generosity were demanding that their empire stop its conquests and start helping other species instead. Veltara herself had become the leader of the Zephyrian rebellion. She had declared that her people would no longer serve an emperor who destroyed beautiful things. Half the Zephyrian fleet had joined her cause. The other half remained loyal to the old ways, but they were losing support every day as more Zephyrians learned about human culture. Morrison was taken to meet with the leaders of the alien coalition that had formed to defend humanity. The Altarian Council spoke for dozens of peaceful species. The Korvaxi war chief represented the warrior cultures that had chosen honor over conquest. The ethereal consciousness itself had taken physical form to participate in the discussions. They told Morrison that humanity would not be forgotten or abandoned. Earth would be rebuilt not as a human world, but as a symbol of what could be achieved when different species worked together. The new Earth would be home to beings from across the galaxy who shared human values of cooperation and generosity. Hayes found herself working with Altarian doctors to develop new medical treatments that combined human and alien knowledge. The techniques they created could heal injuries and diseases that had been thought impossible to cure. She realized that by sharing human medical knowledge freely, they had gained access to discoveries that would benefit everyone. Turner became the first human ambassador to the Galactic Network. His job was to help different species understand each other and work together. He spent his days translating not just languages but ideas and concepts that had never been shared between species before. The network that had started as humanity's final message had become a tool for building peace across the galaxy. Martinez was invited to work with the greatest engineers from dozens of species to design new technologies. By combining human creativity with alien science, they were able to build things that none of them could have created alone. Spaceships that could cross the galaxy in days. Cities that floated in the clouds of gas giant planets. Machines that could turn dead worlds into gardens. The Zephyrian Emperor tried one last time to reassert his authority. He ordered his remaining loyal fleets to destroy the rebels and continue the conquest of the galaxy. But he discovered that his empire no longer had the support it needed to wage war. Too many Zephyrian citizens had been inspired by the human example to return to the old ways. Veltara led the final battle against the Emperor's forces. But it was not a battle of weapons and destruction. Instead, she broadcast the complete record of human culture to every Zephyrian ship. She showed them human music and art and stories. She demonstrated human medical techniques and engineering innovations. She proved that humans had chosen to give their greatest treasures even to their enemies. The Emperor's fleet surrendered without firing a shot. Faced with the evidence of human generosity, the Zephyrian soldiers could no longer bring themselves to serve an empire built on cruelty and conquest. The 1,000-year reign of the Zephyrian Empire ended not with a bang, but with the quiet realization that there was a better way to live. Years later, Morrison stood in the rebuilt city of New Denver, watching children from a dozen different species play together in the parks. His adopted Altarian daughter ran up to hug him while his partner Hayes smiled nearby. The earth that had been burned to ash was now green and beautiful again. But more than that, it had become the heart of a new galactic civilization, the network. That had started as humanity's dying gift had grown into something magnificent. Species across the galaxy shared their knowledge and helped each other solve problems. Wars had not ended completely, but they were becoming rare as more civilizations chose cooperation over conflict. The human example had shown them all that. The greatest strength was not the power to take, but the wisdom to give. Morrison often thought about that moment on the Guardian when he had decided not to surrender. He had believed they were making humanity's final statement to the universe. Instead, they had made humanity's first gift to a galactic family they had never imagined could exist. When humans had nothing left to lose, they had discovered they had everything to give. And in giving everything, they had gained a galaxy full of friends who would remember their sacrifice forever.